Well, on our hospital board, I'm basically a community member of the board as a physician, just representing the interests of the physicians and the community, with respect to the hospital. And then with changes in the way medicine is going to be reimbursed in the future, then I'm also a board member of what's called an accountable care organization, which is to change how physicians get paid by Medicare and other payers in the future. Well, you had to have all those undergraduate classes to get into medical school to start with. The biological things were the foundation of essentially the things that you learn in medicine. It's learning about the physiology, the anatomy, all the inner workings of the body. They all basically boil down to basic biologic science. So, I mean, our body's made of cells and water for the most part. Well, I mean, we review labs every day, and so, on lab tests, you're looking at things like people's white blood cell counts, their red blood cell counts, their sodium, their potassium, those types of things, tests that impact the liver or other metabolic processes like blood sugar and cholesterol. And so indirectly, you're looking at tests that are directly related to biologic processes every single day, that we practice. But I never look at something and go, oh, their Krebs cycle's working. That's never been something that I've ever seen or documented, nor have I seen any physician document that. Well, most of the time they're blood tests and urine tests. Sometimes they could be saliva tests, but they're tests to look at things like blood sugars, kidneys, liver tests, thyroid tests, other metabolic processes, vitamin D levels, sometimes other vitamins or nutrient levels, things that impact our day-to-day bodily functions. Sometimes very, very detailed testing of things like the adrenal glands or the pituitary gland, depending on what the issues are that people have going on. Gosh,
if there are
I mean, they're not direct biology topics. I guess they are somewhat. So, studying things like thyroid function, disease processes of the pancreas, like diabetes. So they're biologic related, but not when considered to be biology. They're more of anatomy and physiology related types of studies, but more the practical applications of those. I would advise them to find the things that they're interested in, take the classes that are required, but the ones that they find most interesting, and just pursue the dreams that they want to follow. My least favorite is the paperwork and the governmental regulations that interfere with taking care of our patients. And the most fun part is actually taking care of the vast majority of my patients and just establishing the long-term relationships with them. It's adults, so age 18 to, I have patients as old as probably 98 currently. So most people are probably in their 40s or 50s. Some are generally healthy, but most of them have one or more chronic active medical problems. Well, it'd be nice if they did what we would like them to do, which would be bring in a list, give me the list so I could look at it, but they don't. They have a tendency to come in and ramble. And so we have to try to figure out what are the problems that are going to cause them the most trouble and address those first, and then try to address the rest of the things that may be of concern to them that are actually maybe not even medically important at all. Yeah, so that's a part of our practice that focuses on people that actually want to be healthy and want to be engaged in their health care, or actually just want better access to their doctor. And so that's a fee-based driven type of or it's a fee-based part of our practice where the patients pay us a retainer that's an annual amount. And in return for that, we see them once a year for about a very comprehensive 2-hour physical exam that looks at a whole lot more cardiac risk factors and other risk for other illnesses. And we spend that 2-hour time going over all of that type of data, looking more into their diet and their exercise, their lifestyle, being able to formulate a plan for them to make healthy changes. And then those patients also always have half-hour appointment times, which is not the norm in medicine by any means. And then they have 24-hour access to me. They can call me on my cell phone anytime they need to. They can send me an email that's direct and secure that comes to me, something that doesn't come into my electronic medical record that I don't see unless I log in. And so it's a mechanism of improving the relationships with patients, giving them what they need, which is time, mostly, and just overall improving their access to information and to their doctor when they need it. Absolutely. When I started in practice, in fact, when I came to McKinney in 1999, we did very limited numbers of radiology procedures. And since that time, CATs, it's basically mostly computer driven actually, because computers are faster. They can calculate things that we couldn't calculate before, which allows us to do much higher quality imaging studies. And so the things that we can see on CAT scan and ultrasound and MRI are things we wouldn't have even dreamed about when I was a medical student or even in residency. We rarely ordered a CAT scan when I was a resident, and can't remember ever ordering an MRI when I was a resident. And today those are things I utilize on a daily basis, looking at tissues and having our interventional radiologists do procedures that you could never imagine 15 years ago. I did, but they were medical labs. I never worked in a biology type of lab. When I was in high school, I was in a program that I worked 2 hours, or actually 3 hours a day in the morning before I went to school for a couple of years. And I worked in the hospital lab, so I learned to do pretty much all the labs that we did in our local community hospital, and then spent 2 years on a medical laboratory technology program, further learning those techniques, which really enhanced my ability for the practice of medicine later. Well, by performing the lab tests, I understood when there might be errors or how tests were more related to each other. And then basically, I learned how to interpret those tests long before I ever learned them in medicine. And especially even with microbiology can be very complicated. And when you understood it from the performing the test perspective and learned all the bacteria and what diseases they caused, it made it a lot easier to learn those when I needed to actually learn the diseases that, learn how to deal with the diseases that people came in with. I don't think anything would have prepared me any better. I think if I knew where medicine was headed today, I would have specialized other than going into primary care. But other than that, I'm not sure I would have done anything else different. And maybe gastroenterology, because it's more procedurally oriented. It's the study of gastrointestinal problems. So it's the doctors that deal with the liver problems, the stomach problems, intestinal types of problems. And today they treat things like the viral hepatitises, which we didn't have any kind of treatments for back, years ago. They do all the upper scopes when they look down into your stomach or into the small intestine. They're the ones that do colonoscopies and take out polyps. So they do a lot of other types of procedures as well. Well, fortunately, technology's changed a lot since I was in school. I mean, when I was in medical school, we barely used computers at all. The internet was not a public thing. In fact, it really didn't exist much. And so, you used to just have to read books and journal articles and that kind of thing. But today, you can be subscribed to email programs, and the email programs will send you current alerts on current studies that were just published, and so you can read small amounts of information quickly to discern what you want to read, and what may be important to you, the individual doctor. And even compared to when I was a resident, we basically had to look up drugs and write them down in a book so that you could see the things or you could reference the things that you needed when you were on call at night. Now that's all computer driven. I mean, what I can access on my phone, I can look up almost anything medically related that I need to, and in just a few seconds I can look up any drug that I want. I can look up the drug interactions with other drugs that are important. I can see those things all in just a matter of seconds, where before it could take sometimes an hour or more to look up that type of information. So now it's all at the palm of our hand, which is something we never had before. We get journals as well, and we have required continuing education on an annual basis, and we have to do recertification for our board exams every 10 years. So it's ongoing, continuous.